Hello YouTube. I've seen Yorgos Lanthimos' new film Poor Things, starring Golden Globe winner Emma Stone. Let's watch the trailer and talk about it.
This is Bella. Where did she come from? I reanimated her. Her brain and her body are not quite synchronized.
Whee!
Language is coming.
Poor Things is spectacularly entertaining.
You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
An incredible cinematic experience you won't soon forget.
I am finding being alive fascinating.
Oh.
Poor Things, rated R.
So, Poor Things, new film from Yorgos Lanthimos. Yorgos Lanthimos, I think most people will know him from his last film, The Favourite, which I think Olivia Colman won Best Supporting Actress from. So I think that's sort of a film people will mostly know him for. I originally maybe it came on my radar probably about 10-12 years ago, his film Dogtooth, which was kind of really different and shocking and great that I saw. And then after that I saw his other Greek language film Alps, which is another kind of really odd film. And that's kind of then moved on to, obviously he's done a lot of English language films like The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I haven't seen, The Favourite, and obviously most recently now Poor Things. And I think Yorgos Lanthimos and Poor Things is kind of no exception of this. He's a filmmaker a bit like Wes Anderson, who has a very much his own style in that characters tend to there's a lot of surrealism isn't the right word, but he presents not every day, he presents sort of situations that just have this undercurrent of surrealism to them, and odd things happen and no one really kind of draws attention to them too much, and that's is a flavour in his work. As well as that, I think Poor Things, as well as The Favourite, has this very distinct visual look that he uses these super wide lenses, and you actually see the distortions around the edge of the frame of as someone's walking past the frame, they'll distort and bend because the lens that they're using is so wide. So he's a filmmaker that very much has his own style, and jumping the gun slightly, I hope he doesn't become a victim too much of that style, a bit like Wes Anderson has, where they become such a parody and they become so locked into a particular thing, they become just like a meme and a parody, and you don't really, their work ends up feeling a bit stale. So that's Yorgos Lanthimos, and obviously Poor Things. So here in the UK it opens this coming Friday, which is the 15th. No, it's not the 15th. It is the 12th of January that it opens in the UK. And obviously it was released in the States early December 2023. And obviously we've just had the Golden Globes a couple of days ago, and Emma Stone's won best lead performance by a female actress in a musical or comedy. I think that's how what the category is. So this film is, the basic story is Emma Stone plays, Emma Stone is, because you find this out pretty early on, Emma Stone plays a woman who commits suicide and was pregnant, and her body is found by Willem Dafoe, who plays, let's just say, a mad scientist type character, who takes the brain of the body, takes the brain of the baby inside her and puts it into, the fully grown woman's body, and then basically he begins to raise essentially this, fully grown baby lady to be as like a scientific experiment, and almost ultimately does raise it as her child. That's the central story. But then where it goes on from that is that basically she starts going out into the world and exploring the world, and a big part of her exploring the world is having sex, and a lot of sex, and that's probably the main thing to say about this film. There is loads of nudity in it, and I totally see why Emma Stone kind of got the Best Actress Golden Globe for this, because she really goes for it. You see everything of her, and you see her, you know, kind of grinding away on people, and you see, as well as Emma Stone being naked, you see loads of cocks and like loads of wobbly bits in this. So if you don't like sex in films, don't watch this, because there is tons of it all the way through the film. Yeah, weirdly, I saw this at the cinema, and the BBFC of the UK, they redesigned their logos for film certificates probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And when the certificate came up for Poor Things, which is an 18 rated film, which in the UK is the highest rated you can have, well, other than an X, but the highest kind of rated, standard distributed film. When the 18 certificate came up on the BBFC certification card before the film, I suddenly realised I hadn't seen that logo before on the big screen, and it made me realise so few 18s are made that much these days. And I think that some ways is like a cynical thing of me. Well, this is maybe just me being kind of grumpy and grown up. It sort of feels like, there's just this commercial desire to make everything like a 12 or a 15, you know, to kind of get as broad an audience as possible into it. And it's really rare that you see these kind of films that are kind of made for a grown-up audience to kind of, you know, and the market for them is potentially going to be limited. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of me saying Poor Things is an 18, and that's kind of, it feels unusual to see an 18 rated film at the cinema. The other thing probably to say is like the story. So Yorgos Lanthimos, in a lot of his previous work, and this is no exception, kind of has this very deadpan, dry, surreal kind of, you know, kind of tone to his films. This film is no exception, and then on top of that, the story is kind of taking place in what at a glance looks like the 1800s, but really it's not the 1800s. It's almost like this slightly abstract steampunk version of the 1800s, and you see horses and carriages that are like cars but with a horse's head on it, and there's like these medical, you know, contraptions that are really not historically accurate and weird, and it's like what would a dialysis machine look like, you know, if it were made a few hundred years earlier, what would that look like? And, you know, so the film has the kind of design, it takes place almost in this, it does take place in this fantasy world. So in combination with this, it taking place in like an alternative 1800s, the film also has, for the most part, the film is kind of shot on like real locations. But occasionally when you go out into the bigger world and you see the bigger world, the way that the world looks is very fake. And that's fine, and I like things that kind of take this very kind of unusual look to them, and they're kind of almost being aware of their own artifice. But this is slightly unusual, where they've kind of gone for this look that's slightly fake, and I don't know whether it's the look or it's just bad visual effects, but sometimes I got drawn out of it a little bit because of this slightly fake look to the film. And a good example of this is there's a sequence midway through the film, or not a sequence, kind of a chapter in the film that takes place on a boat, and whenever they're on the deck of the boat and you see the ocean and the sea, it just looks like really bad. It has obviously this big look to it, and the skies are kind of over the top in terms of their colour, but the actual sea itself and the water and the boat and the way you see the boat cutting through the water, or the ship should I say, cutting through the water, it just looks like bad visual effects more than it does look like this stylized thing. And that's kind of one of my gripes with the film, is it just looks slightly fake. That fake look just feels a bit cheap, really. But other than that, when they go to, you know, when it's obviously shot on locations or on sound stages, the film looks great and it feels really real and tangible. And then when you get these kind of moments where the look is slightly artificial, it just looks bad rather than being part of the style of the film. Willem Dafoe plays let's call him the mad scientist character, and Willem Dafoe is good in this. He's always good. In fact, I was sort of thinking about this watching it. Willem Dafoe is really one of the great actors of his generation, but he almost does so much work, and we're kind of so used to seeing him, we kind of get diluted down, I think, to the fact of how good he is. I mean, he's someone who's often in films that are not worthy of him being in them, and yeah, maybe that kind of dilutes down the fact of how good he is, really. And this is no exception. He kind of plays this mad scientist character with this weird accent that I totally couldn't work out. It's sort of slightly like Welsh, Irish, Scottish, Eastern European sort of accent, but that kind of works because he's kind of like a big exaggerated character. But as well as playing this big exaggerated character, he does play this quite caring and benevolent father kind of figure to Emma Stone's character, and he's great in that. Also, the other kind of interesting thing about this is we see a lot of English actors often play Americans doing American accents. This is almost the other way around, where we've got a lot of American actors doing English accents, one of which is Mark Ruffalo. He's also in this. And he plays sort of like this kind of bounding kind of cad character who, sweeps Emma Stone off her feet and takes him away, and they go off on this adventure together. And he plays almost like a slightly Terry Thomas type cad figure who's a bit of a buffoon and a bit of a joke. And that kind of works with the fact that his English accent in this is terrible, and it's not quite distracting because he's just such a ridiculous kind of character, and you can get away with his like such over the top weird English accent to this. So as well as the film having this really big unusual look and tone to it, the score to the film is also really kind of striking and is just as weird as everything else in the film. It's by a guy that I hadn't heard of before called, and I'm just checking it on the screen down here, Jerskin Frendrix, who doesn't seem to have done any film scores before. And yeah, his work in this it reminded me of the soundtrack to something like Mika Levy's score for Under the Skin, in terms of it being really kind of abstract. It creates melodies out of, and sometimes it doesn't create melodies, it creates these weird incoherent kind of banging sounds out of instruments that tonally you just don't know what they are. It's a slightly industrial kind of sound to it, or it sounds like an orchestra that kind of has been detuned, or so the score to the film really stood out to me, and it kind of adds to the flavour of the film. As mentioned, there's a lot of sex in it. People might find it slightly kind of morally kind of questionable and weird, in terms of at the start of the film, Emma Stone's character is almost kind of like this, the mind of a child in like a fully grown woman's body, but she's got all these men kind of around her who are kind of attracted to her and want to be her suitor. Some people will, in fact, I found that really kind of like, this is kind of wrong, isn't it? And I think the film is so weird and dry that I kind of feel like it kind of felt weird to me and kind of totally morally wrong, but it's sort of, you can kind of get away with it a little bit just because so many of the other elements to the film are so kind of unusual, and you're not dealing with kind of like a real world kind of feeling to it. You can kind of let that go a bit. However, as the film goes along, and obviously, what's great about Emma Stone, and another reason why I feel like probably quite deserved that she did win the Golden Globe for this, is that she goes from this, very childlike character almost all the way through to where it ends up with, spoilers, is that she's very articulate and clever, kind of that tracking that journey, her journey through the film. I think, while it's a satisfying arc for an audience to watch, for her to shoot that when films have shot out a sequence, that must have taken loads of logistical planning for her to just to really focus on certain scenes and just chart where within her access and her growth she was in a particular scene on a particular day that they've been shooting. So that's really great to see. I would recommend this if you do like kind of slightly unusual films. I think if this isn't something you put on just to casually watch. This is a film that really is in your face, and I think you have to be kind of prepared for that. Obviously there's a lot of sex in it, so if you don't want to see sex on screen, don't watch this, because there's tons of it. This also has a long run time. It's 2 hours 20 minutes. It didn't feel like a slog to get through. I kind of felt like it kind of moved along quite nicely when I was watching this. However, I feel like because of the runtime, I'm really unlikely to go back and revisit this that often, just because while it's a great film to sit down and absorb in the cinema and be kind of, taken over by its weirdness and how like confrontational it is, watching it at home where you can dedicate that much time to it and really be focused in on it, I find is a little bit more kind of challenging to do. So I feel like, I'm probably not going to rewatch this. But however, one of the nice things about the film, where I think like in home viewing it does live quite nicely, is the film's always broken down into kind of chapters. In fact, it is broken down into chapters, and you get title cards of where she is in terms of her journey. So maybe watching it at home, it does kind of work a little bit more as like something that you can watch in chunks and enjoy still, because of these like chapter markers in the film. So yeah, that's Poor Things. I would recommend it. I know it was on a lot of people's top 10 lists last year, and I can see why. I don't think it would have been, even if I had seen it last year, I don't think this would have been in on my top 10, but I can see why people do like it. So that's Poor Things. If you're in the States, it came out theatrically at the start of December. If you're in the UK, it comes out this coming Friday. So if you see it and you like it, let me know in the comments down below. If you see it and you don't like it, let me down in the comments below. All right.